This is Cast of Wonders, the young adult fiction podcast featuring stories of the fantastic. Episode 452. Welcome. I'm Carissa Sluss, a co-assistant editor at Cast of Wonders and your host for this episode. You're listening to Little Wonders, our thematic flash fiction episodes. Last autumn, Cast of Wonders ran its annual flash fiction contest, and today we're bringing you the winning stories, as voted for by the Escape Artists Discussion Forum members at forum.escapeartists.net. Our first story, which tied for second place, is Porch Light for the Lonely by Alison Grauer. Alison is an author and an actor originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Her first novel, On the Isle of Sound and Wonder, is a steampunk retelling of Shakespeare's The Tempest. In addition to writing, she has performed on stage at Renaissance fairs, on podcasts, and at world-class theme parks in Orlando, Florida. She has a secret love of mountains and a not-so-secret love of horses. She can be found at dreamstobecome.com or on Twitter and Instagram at dreamstobecome. Alison is also the narrator for her story. And now we have several tales to tell.
Porch Light for the Lonely by Alison Grauer. Read by the author. When the big wide sky is black, embroidered with thousands of silver stars, and crickets sing unseen in the dry grass, critters come to the porch of the old house. The rug has long since lost its color from years of harsh sun. The wrought iron bench is rusted, enamel flaking away like tree bark. The mailbox is crooked, and the torn curtains blow gently in the wind. Though it's the sturdiest house left on the block, it sits unlived in, untrespassed. Only the flies and spiders know how empty it truly is inside. Many cats come, strays, abandoned pets and feral. They drape themselves about the porch, meowing with quiet yearning. "Why are we here?" asks a snowshoe kitten. He flops on the dry rug, scratching an itch on his back, and comes up covered in bits of dead grass and red dirt. He sneezes. A gray-brown cat lashes her white-tipped tail. "Have some respect." "For what? For who?" The kitten is old enough to know that only people live in houses, and they never share with cats. To survive is to eat bugs and field mice, or to steal from the garbage of the diner on the main street, not to sit on the porch of an empty old homestead waiting for handouts that never come. "Just wait," says the gray cat. A dry summer breeze rustles through cottonwood trees all up and down the empty block, and owls sit in the branches, waiting. From the hills beyond the road come the deer, wary of the world and stepping so daintily. Moths murmur near the porch light, although its bulb long ago burnt out. The kitten can hear the other animals murmuring to one another. "A great lady lived here," whispers a doe to her fawn. "She had flowers and vegetables in her yard. Music played through every window, and the light was always on." "There was always food," adds an anxious young buck. "Pa says there was even food for us, when every other house in town would chase us away with noises and dogs." A frantic moth darts about the porch, too young by far to remember those days. "What happened to her?" "She died." The owl on the lowest branch of the cottonwood tree blinks his enormous eyes. "It's what happens." The assembled animals fall silent. Even the crickets pause their music. The snowshoe kitten looks at the screen door of the house and feels the waves of longing from the other cats around him. Even the deer, owls, and moths feel mournful. The kitten feels it too, and he can't help himself. A soft, sad mew escapes him. "Then why do we still come?" he whispers. "Because," murmurs the gray cat, "sometimes." The old porch light hums, then flickers on. The moths scatter in wild concentric circles. Delighted gasps echo from all over the porch and the yard. "Sometimes she comes back for us." The screen door squeals open, slow and steady.
I must confess, I'm usually more of a dog person than a cat person. In fact, I'm the dog mom to a 14-year-old husky mixed named Bonnie. However, after college, but before I got married, I lived with 4 cats. They belonged to my roommates at the time. Those cats were always interesting company, and it's no surprise cats end up in so many speculative fiction stories. They're inherently magical beings. No one who has ever spent any significant time with cats can say that they haven't suspected, at least once or twice, that their cat is either an otherworldly being or has otherworldly sensibilities. It's completely believable that cats and ghosts would be great friends. So that begs me to ask, is this story really all that speculative after all? What I love best about Porch Light for the Lonely is that despite it being wonderfully moody and atmospheric, it's also sweet. It reminds me that to mourn is to experience a mix of emotions, sometimes conflicting ones. There's sadness, but there's also remembering, and in those memories, there is often joy. Our second story is Bony Bonnie Dead Horse by Shane Halbach. Bony Bonnie Dead Horse also tied for second place in our contest. Shane lives in Chicago, where he writes software by day and avoids writing stories by night. His fiction has appeared in Analog, Intergalactic Medicine Show, and the year's best YA speculative fiction, among others. He blogs at shanehalbach.com or can be found on Twitter at Shane Halbach. The narrator for this story is Tonya Ransom. Tonya is the creator and executive producer of Nightlight, a horror podcast featuring creepy tales written by Black writers. Tonya has been scaring people since the 2nd grade, when she wrote her first story based on Michael Myers. She's pretty sure her teacher was concerned, but she thinks she turned out fine-ish. Tonya tells horror stories regularly on Twitter at Misdefying. That's MISSDEFYING. And her debut novella, Risen, was released in early December 2020. She lives in Austin, Texas.
Bony Bonnie Dead Horse by Shane Halbach, narrated by Tonya Ransom. Aaliyah always wanted a horse. Mama said she couldn't have one in the city because what would it eat? And besides, where were they going to keep it? Not up on the 4th floor. But Aaliyah wanted it so bad. She leaned out of her bedroom window, even though Mama said she would fall out, and just sort of pushed out from her brain. Her brain pushed, "Come here, horse. I need you more than anything in the world." And Bony Bonnie Dead Horse came. She stood under Aaliyah's window and looked up, with her big, empty skull-socket eyes. Bonnie wouldn't need anything to eat, because she was already dead, and she wouldn't need a place to stay, because Aaliyah quickly learned that during the day, Bonnie just went away. Aaliyah was in love. "Black kids don't ride horses," said DeAndre. But they did. Aaliyah did. "There's no such thing as skeleton horses," said Mama. But there was. Bonnie. By the end of 4th grade, nobody was into horses anymore, but that's because they didn't have a real horse like Aaliyah did. It didn't fade for Aaliyah like it did for them. None of the other 6th graders knew the feeling of sitting in the park under the street lamp, reading a book against Bony Bonnie Dead Horse's curved white ribs. None of the other 8th graders knew the feeling of flying down the middle of 74th Street, with the stars barely visible against the glow overhead, while Bonnie's bony hooves echoed against the empty brick buildings and closed storefronts. In high school, Aaliyah didn't see Bonnie as much anymore, but Bonnie was always there, her secret weapon. There were still a lot of people telling Aaliyah she couldn't do stuff, but deep in her heart, Aaliyah always knew they were wrong. If a skeleton horse could canter out of the dark when her ride wouldn't take her home from a party, then who says she couldn't get an A in biochem? The two had nothing to do with each other, and yet, they did. After her undergrad, Aaliyah applied to Johns Hopkins. "Go get 'em," said DeAndre. He didn't doubt her anymore. On the morning of her 24th birthday, Aaliyah heard a voice in her head. "I need you more than anything in the world," said the voice. It was a girl's voice, young. That night, Aaliyah took Bonnie for a ride around Lake Montebello. She held on to Bonnie's bony neck tight, 15 years' worth of gratitude. "There's a girl," said Aaliyah apologetically. "She needs you more than I do." Bony Bonnie looked at her with its big, empty skull-socket eyes, but Aaliyah knew Bonnie approved. "Thank you," said Aaliyah, and "I love you," and "Go get her." Bonnie did something almost like a bow and went away. Aaliyah knew she wouldn't be back. Aaliyah stood looking out over the dark waters of Lake Montebello. She wasn't afraid. Of anything. Who was there to say she couldn't?
I rode horses as a young girl, and later when I was in college and worked at a summer camp with a horse riding program. I was never very serious about it as more than a casual hobby, but I took lessons long enough to learn the basics and to be fairly confident in my riding ability. Over the years, though, I lost my affinity for it. I kind of have a long history of getting passionate about things for a little while before something new comes along and catches my interest. This story, though, really touches that place in my heart that still belongs to the little girl who used to love riding. Yet my favorite part was when grown-up Aaliyah realized it was time to let Bonnie go so that she could inspire another girl to grow up brave and fierce, just as she did. Another part of this story that stuck out to me was when DeAndre said, "Black kids don't ride horses." DeAndre raises a good point. Especially in the U.S., riding tends to be a privileged activity, marketed mainly towards white people. As far as hobbies go, it can be pretty expensive, and it isn't easily accessible to a lot of people. But one of the cool things I learned about this past year, in connection with the Black Lives Matter movement, was about the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club. During the protests, news coverage often featured this group of urban cowboys, black men and women, riding horses on the streets of Philadelphia. Founded by Ellis Farrell, the Fletcher Street Urban Riding Club works to bring the benefits of horse riding and horsemanship to an underserved inner-city population. Find out more about them and their mission on their website at fsurc.com. Our final story, and the overall winner of the 2020 Flash Fiction Contest, is Scribe's Garden by Reed Mingo. Reed is the daughter of a Marine and hasn't spent more than a few years in one place in her life. Her formative years, when not moving cross-country and across oceans, were spent on horseback and handling birds of prey, and she'll happily tell you more than you wanted to know about either. Reed lives with her geneticist husband, precocious daughter, and fey cat, Puka. Reed can be found on Twitter at MilvusScribe. That's MilvussScribe. The narrator for Scribe's Garden is Danielle Imara. Danielle is a UK-based multidisciplinary artist.
The Scribe's Garden by Reid Mingle, narrated by Danielle Imara. There is dirt under Kellebeck's nails and worn into the lines of her hands. Her garden is full of flowers and bees and hummingbirds and life. She breathes in deep, letting the muddled sweetness of 100 kinds of flowers sink deep into her lungs, savouring it for the fleeting pleasure it is. This peace never lasts. Not in the season of the butterfly. Soon everyone, from rulers to beggars, will come seeking her garden's gifts. "Scribe, I found another!" Her protégé holds out cupped hands, breathless. Curled into them is a spiky black and yellow buckeye caterpillar. The garden loves Parvana. Wonderful. Come and put it with the others. Kellebeck lets the young woman lead the way around the side of her cottage to the arium, feeling every one of her many years. What do you think it will become? Hope, Parvana says, sure as sunrise, and deposits the creature on fresh leaves. Kellebeck tends to the linen-screened arium at dawn before Parvana arrives. Her toes sink into the soil she's sown with magic as much as wildflowers, with ink, pigment and sigil. A handful of chrysali hang from the charm-carved illuminated arch of woven rowanwood, waiting. The magic they've consumed in the leaves has changed them. Kellebeck has learned to guess what gifts lay within. The golden chrysalis as long as her thumb holds hope. The next one, blue of a summer's sky, grants peace. The mottled green one, a blessing for crops, all small, well-loved gifts. And the new one, skipper small and wriggling to rid itself of its molt. A wish. The starfield and gold pod is unmistakable. Kellebeck's knees give way and she drops to the dark earth, staring. Not again. Her garden has given a wish. What will you do with it? Parvana asks as Kellebeck transfers the fragile pod to a glass jar. Her hand closes on the lid and for a moment she considers letting it die in airless dark. Wishes are dangerous. People have killed over those butterflies. She is so tired of wishes. But if she does not raise them, another scribe will. One who cares only about what can be gained and not those in need. There's no one else who cares. I don't know. Kellebeck sinks into a chair. I thought there'd never be another. The petitioners will show up soon. Their scribes will have told them. Scribe, please rest. I will handle it. There's no one else. Parvana smiles, picks up the jar, and lays an ink-stained hand on Kellebeck's arm. Am I your protégé or not? The petitioners have come and gone. No one fought. No one died. Parvana has stardust in her hair and her eyes are bright. I didn't give it to them. I made my wish like you did with the very first. I wished to be a wise and worthy heir. Kellebeck can't tell if it's relief or pride or both flooding her eyes as she embraces Parvana. You are. You are.
Generally, the goal of a good flash fiction story is to be whole and complete, while also being succinct. There's no doubt that the story managed to do that, but there's still a feeling, in a very good way, that there is a much larger and more complex world beyond the bounds of this very immediate tale. Thankfully, about her story, Reid Mingle says, I spent a lot of time this summer raising butterflies with my daughter in those science kits, you know, and this was inspired by that experience. I'm hoping to write more in this scribal magic setting eventually. I really love it. We love it too, obviously, and we're so thankful Reid shared it with us, and we do hope she writes more. If you enjoyed these stories, we hope you'll consider entering Cast of Wonder's next Flash Fiction contest. Now is a great time to start working on your submission. We want speculative fiction that fits our usual guidelines at no more than 500 words. That's a hard limit, no exceptions. And if you can't wait until our next contest, we love to receive flash fiction during any of our general submission periods. The word count is a little more flexible during general submission. Keep your eyes on our Twitter account and on our website for updates about our next general submission period and for announcements about our next contest, which usually occurs in the late fall. We love bringing you the best audio fiction week after week, but we can't do it without your support. Your donations pay our authors, our narrators, our servers, and our staff. Please consider supporting us with a monthly donation through either PayPal or Patreon. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts, request us on Spotify, and consider the stories we publish for award consideration. There are lots of ways you can help. Join the discussion on the EA Forum, forum.escapeartist.net, on the EA Discord, or visit us on Twitter at Cast of Wonders. Come say hello. Cast of Wonders is a production of Escape Artists Incorporated and is brought to you by editor Catherine Inskip, assistant editors Andrew K. Ho and Carissa Sluss, associate editors Amy Brennan, Alicia Caparasso, William Height Minor, Umaira Hussein, Sean Proctor, Ray O, Susie Rodriguez, and Emma Smales. Audio producer Jeremy Carter. Community manager Denise Siddell. Cast of Wonders episodes are released under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can download or share the episode, but you can't change it or sell it. Our theme music is Neversus by Alexei Nov, available from Promo DJ or his Facebook page. Thanks for listening.